everybody. Welcome to my paper for Our Mythical Nature. I've been looking forward to doing this for so very long. It feels as if so many paths have led to this point. So I'm giving this talk not where we'd originally anticipated and planned, i.e. in Warsaw, but from my office via Zoom at Roehampton University, an appropriately nature-rich place just out here. So I'm on the edge of what's called Deacy College. Right over there is Frobel College, and just 5 minutes away is a key artifact showing Hercules in a mythical nature that I'm particularly going to be saying some things about. Now, the key thing I'm going to be talking about are some activities that I've been designing for a few years now as part of my role within the Our Mythical Childhood project. And it's a project that also is something that I've been gradually building up since about 2009, okay? So, but things really escalated for me at around about 2016 when the Our Mythical Childhood project began, and the dream I'd had of designing some activities for autistic children turned into a scary reality with deadlines, etc. Over the years, I've done various things like not just write activities, but actually take them into schools. That's happened in an in-person way. It's also happened via Zoom since lockdown, which has worked very, very well, okay? And one thing I'd say is that there's a lot we can learn from lockdown experiences concerning how best to work with autistic people and really try to get what it is to experience autism in ways that can be facilitated and enhanced, etc., when people don't actually have to meet with other people in person, face to face. But when I've gone into schools, all right, and this is something I've had to like reach over and pick up when I'm actually in the office. When I've gone into schools, I've inspired by what one of the teachers was doing at a school in London I went to. I now have, well, I call it an amphora because there's an amphora on the key scene that I will share with you soon, but it's based on the bucket that she would share at the start of her lessons with her students, and they really liked it. And in the bucket would be things that were relevant to that lesson. So here is my bucket, actually a linen basket I bought from a nearby supermarket. And in it are various things that I like to take along to places. So I'm doing the kind of, online equivalent here. There's all sorts of things that are relevant in some way to the activities. A helmet, a sword, various things linked with nature. Things like tinsel, okay, things you can use for craft activities, right, such as pipe cleaners, right? And when I've taken these into classes with students, they've really enjoyed making things like dragonflies, butterflies, snakes, okay, that kind of thing. There's also various things like flowers, lots of stickers, things like, yeah, okay, this obviously these aren't stickers, but pens, pencils, and here are some of the stickers. Okay, so the activities have a very sort of hands-on dimension, but when I was giving a talk on this project at the University of Reading via Zoom a few months ago, one of the questions I was asked is, can the activities happen if I'm not actually going into classes to do them? Yes, they absolutely can. And one of the things I'm doing right now is finishing off a book presenting the activities. And the activities are presented very much in a way geared to how teachers can use them with children in their classes. So what I'm going to be doing, and fitting in with the title of this talk, is taking you to what Xenophon in the Memorabilia describes as, well, Xenophon quoting Socrates, who's quoting Prodicus, and there are all sorts of layers here. But I'm going to take you via Xenophon, etc., Xenophon et al., to a quiet place where Hercules sat pondering over what to do, right? What choice he needed to make in life between two very extreme, but both very Herculean ways of life. And I'm going to talk about how and why that is relevant to nature and to mythology and to autism and to the activities that I'm finalising. Okay, now one of the things I've been doing lately is reorganising my office. I actually moved into this office just before the original March 2020 lockdown, and so I put a lot of stuff in the filing cabinet as it looked like you know, we were going to go into lockdown, and I'm only now trying to like work out where everything is. But one of the things I found recently was the programme and various materials from a workshop I was able to organise on October the 2nd, 2018, for external partners, right? I was able to get some funding to enable a group of autism specialists from various parts of the UK, including some very eminent people, my heroes no less, to Roehampton on the days where we had face-to-face meetings, to meet with me so I could present, right, the activities I was then very much at an earlier stage with, and get their feedback. Okay, so when I did this, they very much interrogated me on things like why classics, why classical myths for autistic children, and why Hercules in particular. Okay, they said things like, you know, why does it have to be classical myths? Why not some other form of mythology? Why not something like Winnie the Pooh, for example? Then we had a very interesting discussion about just how relevant Winnie the Pooh could be. Anyway, the various whys they asked, why classics, why classical myths, why Hercules, they're all very good whys, all very good questions. And one way in which I answered this question was to talk them through how, in my view, right, based on various things I've been working through over the years, and also based on my own experiences of myth and Hercules, I try to give an autistic take on why Hercules, and why I initially had this gut feeling that Hercules could resonate with autistic children and with autistic people more broadly, and how I tested this, right, and how this gut feeling has been borne out. And there was an interesting change in the room after I did this, thanks to the response of one of the people who was there at this event, who is an autistic academic, who at another UK university, who's part of a group that pioneers the role of autistic people in autism research. So I outlined various reasons why I think Hercules can resonate with what it is to be autistic. For example, being able to succeed in ways others cannot, but always having to learn the world afresh, always having to learn a new set of rules afresh, being able to flourish in his own space, but then finding it difficult when he moves amongst other people, sometimes to such an extent that he experiences so many different things at once that what happens is moments of violence, indeed extreme violence, that can be commensurate with what it is when you're autistic, when you go through an overload, the volcano effect, for example. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but this is the key thing I'm going to be talking about, and it may well be mirrored on your screen. I'm not sure. If I try to change it around, that might mess things up. But in any case, there's a mountain. All right, there's a mountain here. Right, it's doing various bits of work, steep, craggy paths going down it that some people have actually reinterpreted, interestingly, as a river. Interesting. I just do kind of like to see the image of the mountain as signaling the volcano that might erupt out of the frustrations of Hercules that unable to fit in so many ways. Anyway, so I've just given you here a very sort of partial outline of what I said at the time, which was a bit more connected. But his response was, that sounds like being autistic. Right, and that was a key moment for me that really confirmed me in my thinking that I was onto something here and should keep going. And what I'm going to do now for this presentation is just give a very brief overview of the activities that I've designed, which are in the form of a set of lessons for autistic children. They can be done by, they were initially pitched at children in the latter few years of primary school in the UK, so ages 8-ish till 11-ish. But I have tried them out with older children as well, and they've worked. I've tried them with adults and they've worked. And in fact, when I've tried them out with adults, various people have then shared their own experiences of autism with me afterwards. So it all seems to work. Okay. So, and I'm going to talk about it in relation to our theme of mythical nature in two regards. Firstly, human nature, right? Human nature, and whether there is something that can be called an autistic nature that is part of human nature, but also a distinctive part of human nature, and how far that kind of autistic nature might resonate with the concept of Hercules. Okay, so there's human nature, and within that, autistic human nature. And secondly, there's the natural world, particularly the mythical natural world, that is so absolutely key to the key aspect of Hercules, the key representation of Hercules that I'm going to be focusing on. So, as I've said, the activities are based around Hercules. Hercules, who is the great traveller, the great doer of deeds, okay, who travels the known world and goes beyond the known world as well, never stops apart from at various points, including in the story, that is the key focus of the activities. Like I said, in Xenophon's Memorabilia, one of actually very few ancient sources for this event, right? It became very key in much later centuries, Renaissance, 18th century, not least in Britain, hence the representation over there, right, from which this rather wonderful line drawing has been created by the artist Steve Simons, over there in the in Grove House in the Adam Room on an 18th century chimneypiece panel from which this drawing is adapted. So the activities then are based on Hercules when he's at a strange place. And as is conveyed in the chimneypiece panel, as for example drawn here, but possibly mirrored for you, I'm not sure. I should be able to show it the right way around soon, okay, so just bear with me when I do some screen sharing, right? But I hate screen sharing, so I'm going to put off doing it as long as possible, okay? I think we often rely far too heavily on things like PowerPoint, so I'm going to keep screen sharing to a minimum and hold up things instead. Often the quality is not as good, but there's something more vibrant about it that I very much like. So what you've got here is a scene that I'd always seen as very much a scene of two halves, but it's been very interesting, and those two halves are very much reflected in the way in which I structure the activities. Though I've also, I should stress, been struck by just how far a lot of people who've engaged with the activities do see it as a unified scene. Okay. However, on one side, what you have is a rocky landscape, right, leading up to this steep, craggy mountain. You've got lots of rocks here. You've got a helmet, hence helmet here. There's also a woman holding a sword, and the helmet has a snake on top of it, either because a snake has crawled on top of it or because the helmet is snake fringed. Okay, so on one side, steep, craggy, bare landscape. On the other side, something very lush, okay, where there are, for example, there's an amphora, okay, hence the amphora in place of bucket for the activities. There are two fruit bowls also, one of which is so full of fruit that it is overflowing. So we've got something rocky on one side, we've got something more full of the abundance of nature on the other side, where in contrast to the sparse open landscape on one side, there's a covering over what looks like a tree on the other side that gives shade, that gives artificial shade to the environment. in this place, as I've mentioned, right, I've already mentioned one of the women, but there are two women, two women who in Xenophon's account appear to Hercules, and both of them very much represent, sorry, each of them represents one half of the scene. One of the women is well, arete or virtue, or hard work, very much based on how she was reconfigured in the 18th century. Hard work is on the craggy side leading up to the mountain, and pleasure, kakia, is on the other side. And the two women, okay, well, as shown here, they're each trying to persuade him that that the particular way of life that they stand for is the best one for him. And he is tasked with making a choice between these two ways of life, and he chooses ... But what does he choose? Now, a lot of the ancient sources, I said there aren't that many ancient sources, but a lot of the ones we have don't actually say what he chose. Now, classicists that I've talked about this event with tend to say that of course he must have chosen the way of hard work. He is of course the great hard worker. Hercules is also the great lover of life, who engages, and this is something I very much make something of in the activities. He loves things like eating and drinking, including to excess, right? Hercules is someone who does everything to excess. In the image on the 18th century chimneypiece panel, that, as I've said, is absolutely key to the activities, Hercules is what? He's choosing, or maybe he's unable to choose. Perhaps he's experiencing a range of emotions. Perhaps he's going into shutdown while he's trying to make his decision. And in the 18th century, where the myth was very much updated in relation to 18th century values, it very much spoke to the attempt, both in adult culture and the youth culture in the 18th century. It spoke to the way in which 18th century people, in Britain at least, were trying to find the appropriate balance between things like industry and hard work on the one hand, and the pleasures of life on the other. And one thing that very much sort of underpins what I'm doing is the extent to which the chimneypiece panel and the way in which Hercules and the other women, sorry, are represented on it, can very much resonate with what it is to be autistic. The activities, each of the lessons is concerned with a particular aspect of what it is to be autistic. Okay, so the activities can be done, the lessons can be done as one-offs, or they can be, and in any order as well. Okay, so trying to put something together that works as a connected whole, but also can work as individual lessons, has been and continues to be, as I finish this off, a particular challenge. But lessons include things like making choices, right? And also dealing with the impact of those choices. For autistic people, thinking about how the present can turn into the future can be really, really challenging. So they'll be about choice making. The activities are also about causality, right? So thinking about how actions in the present impact on what comes next. There's also a strong focus on emotions, on dealing with emotions, on recognizing and processing emotions. It's often thought in one of the myths of autism, right, to use the different meaning of myth from the ones that tend to be used by classicists. One of the myths of autism is that autistic people don't have emotions. That's just silly. That's just silly and wrong. No two autistic people are the same, as the saying goes. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. But autistic people tend to feel things very, very deeply. Autistic people can't necessarily always communicate this to others, or right, they might be feeling a particular emotion but show the wrong one. Okay, or they might be feeling like so many things at once, particularly if they're someone new, somewhere where they don't feel in control, right? That they go into a kind of shutdown. So one of the things that I get people to think about is how far Hercules here has gone into, he's feeling so many things at once that he looks blank, right? There's a lot of scope for lots of captions, and I'll show you some examples of how people have put little captions on the image here that very much will deal with like what he might be going through. So making choices, dealing with emotions, arriving in new places. Sort of a lot of scope here for talking about, times when people have been somewhere new, and what they felt at the time and how they coped with being somewhere new. Another thing that autistic people can find hard is dealing with other people. Okay. You might be very safe and secure and confident in your own space, but when you need to interact with others, particularly when they're people new to you, that can be a real challenge. So how to do things, how to interact with others, how to start a conversation with others, that kind of thing is something that's very key to the activities, based very much on the kind of gestures that we can see here between Hercules and also the two women. I should also say that although I picked the figure of Hercules for these activities, I'm extremely interested in and committing to autism and girls. Now, obviously, Hercules can be for everybody, girls and boys, and people of all genders. And there's a great fit there with the very sort of feminine and the very transgender Hercules that we can easily see in ancient sources. When I go on to do further sets of activities based on mythical figures, I'm going to turn to do a focus on female figures, starting very, very possibly with the figure of Medea. Okay. But another thing I do focus on in the activities are the two women here, right? As a classicist who's been interested in Hercules for quite a long time, when I look at this picture, my focus tends to go to the man in the middle. When I've looked at this chimney-piece panel with people who don't know so much classical mythology and maybe have no experience of classical mythology, what they tend to focus on is not the man in the middle, but the two women, right? And how it's not that Hercules is not relevant, right? But the emphasis shifts on the choice this man in the middle is making, to the very interesting way that the two women are trying to make a play for Hercules. There's also an 18th century depiction of the, well, of the two, I was going to say of the choice of Hercules. It's not of the choice of Hercules. There's a very interesting 18th century representation, okay, that I can't remember the details of right now, but it's in my blog. It's in my blog. If anyone wants it, I'll show you the blog link in a moment. I didn't plan to talk about it, so this is all off the top of my head. But anyway, there, right? Yes, it's something linked with Vauxhall Gardens. Sorry, this is all starting to go back to me as I'm talking here. There, you've got the two female figures, no man in the middle, right? And they're holding hands, right? The two women, hard work and pleasure, virtue and vice, however you configure them, they are holding hands. So the man in the middle isn't necessarily needed. And once when I did these activities in an autistic run cafe in Warsaw, one of the people taking part actually cut out Hercules, which is very, very interesting. Initially, I thought it's because they wanted to do something specific with the figure of Hercules. No, they wanted to cut him out, right? Very interestingly. So if there are people who don't like Hercules, and why should you have to like Hercules, there's also plenty of scope here with focusing on the other figures in the scene, and doing away with him entirely, because the activities are, yes, they're about Hercules, but they're also about the people who are doing the activities. And no two people ever respond to this very detail-rich panel in the same way. So there's plenty of scope for bringing your own sort of identities to the image. That had always been the sense I had, and that's just been borne out every time I've talked about the artifact, including over in the Adam room, right, in Grove House, where the original is, and when I've done activities based on specific drawings based on it. So I talked about arriving in new places, amongst other things, how to communicate with others, also on how there's very much an emphasis here in the image on what it can be to experience a sensory overload, something that's very commensurate with autism. What I'm going to do now actually, having given an overview of why Hercules, and hopefully address that question adequately in return in relation to the two aspects of nature I outlined earlier, I just want to show a few things to you, as well as the overall drawing here. There are various details that Steve Simons has also created of various of the figures in the scene. And here's an example from one of the workshops I did at the FIEC, at a big international classics conference in 2019, just a few months, so we didn't do it then before lockdown. Here's a nice instance of where one of the participants picked, and very selectively using her favorite colors, colored in Hercules, and also used some of the stickers that I provided. Okay, I thought this was just like very, very wonderful. Well done. Well done. The figure of hard work is saying. Other people have done a bit of captioning, and again, sort of very selective colouring. Here, the captioning just identifies who the various figures are: virtue, pleasure, Hercules. And I think the colouring creates a nice sense of unity for the scene based around the three figures and some of the key artifacts. Interesting how far bright colours come into this part of the scene. Even though it's this part of the scene where you might particularly expect to see bright colours, where you have, you know, the lush aspects of nature on display. This is an instance I really like. The person who did it actually sort of apologized for only using biro, because they just didn't feel, I didn't feel they didn't want to use pens, that kind of thing, or stickers. So they just picked the biro they had with them. And coloured in the sky. I thought this is wonderful, right? Because Peter, you know, this sort of thing is more typical of people colouring the figures. But this participant coloured in the sky and made it, I don't know, something worthy of Van Gogh's Starry Night, I thought. It's very intense, extremely intense. And I love the way, like I said, right, so here we have the steep, craggy path that some people have reinterpreted. I don't think I've got any examples here, I'm afraid, of as a river. This is more like a lightning flash. Okay. I think the person who did this was putting a lot of themselves into the really sort of channeling emotions, right, into what they were experiencing. And this is where I do my favorite thing, and share screen, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully I'm now doing that. So what I've actually done, I've actually taken you, this is just for the very last thing I want to show. This is to my blog. Yeah, if you want to ever contact me, one way to do it is indeed through this blog. So here's the address here. It starts off with definitely the right way around, yeah, and probably clearer than the one I showed earlier. Depiction of the Steve Simons' drawing of the chimney-piece panel, what I'm just going to briefly show are some things from the most recent blog posting. So I started this blog in about 2009, where I wanted to share in a, I thought, very sporadic way, and it was initially sporadic, though it all changed after the start of our Mythical Childhood. But I wanted to share initially in a very sporadic way my progress with this project. That was at a time when I didn't know how far it would progress, what direction it would go in, etc., etc. It very gradually over the years became, you know, increasingly Herculean, and it's kind of got fixed with Hercules for the last few years, and eventually we'll move on to, like I said, hopefully Medusa, possibly Pandora as well, maybe even Medea, but anyway, we shall see. So here's the most recent posting that I put up. That was just yesterday. So today's the 10th of August, yesterday the 9th of August, I put up a posting about another Zoom thing I'm going to be doing next month in September 2021 at King's College London at a Medical Humanities Healing Classics event. So when I was putting together this posting yesterday, I included just a few illustrations relevant to the project, and I'll use these as a focus, I think, for my talk next month. Here, like I've shown you one of the details that Steve Simons has created individual drawings of, and so here's another, the drinking vessel. Here's another one of the bowls of fruit. Sorry, I was going to say flowers. They're bowls of flowers, but bowls of fruit. I just wanted to show these two things. I hope they're. I can make it a bit. Maybe I can make this a bit bigger. Now all I'm doing is managing to stretch it. But anyway, what we have here. Oh, I had to know that was going to happen. Good. So what we have here is a really interesting intervention that one of the participants, Dr. Anna Meek, made at one of the events in an autism cafe that I've mentioned already, called Life is Cool in Warsaw. She's added captions. She's also given a sense of unity to the scene, right? So she's one of many people who've done that. She's turned, and like I've said, how, you know, it is a steep, craggy path that Hercules needs to climb. I've said that people turn it into a stream. I've said that someone turned it into a lightning flash. She's turned part of it into the tail of Hercules's lion. She has made the lion skin. The lion skin, right? Come back to life, right? And so here is the lion. So she's the level of engagement with nature here is absolutely amazing. And she's turned it into a message of, amongst other things, how best to live. Read books, right? The hard work side, yeah. But that's sort of pleasure, possibly. Eat healthily, yeah. And is that hard work or is that pleasure? Right, not to eat, but not to eat to excess, but eat healthily. Respect animals, right? Okay. So here the lion has come to life, and the snake is also emphasized here on the helmet. So I just wanted to share. Oh, yeah. What I also wanted to share, that worked as well. I didn't know I could do this. Zoom in like this. Yeah. So I'm going to. I'll end with this image because I love it so much. So this is Steve's drawing that takes away everything apart from the mountain and a seat. And I think there's just something wonderful there. The sense of solitude before all the other stuff appears. And again, it gives a sense of, I guess, unity to the scene. This bit is all rocky. This bit is going to have aspects of pleasure, but the seat is made out of stone type things. Okay, so it does give a nice sort of unity to the scene. And here is the mountain that Hercules needs to climb to the top of if he chooses the way of hard work. So I'm saying a lot as I'm drawing this to a close, because I'm trying to think about how best to close it all. I'll do it by stopping sharing for a moment, just to round things off. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation. Here I go again. What I'm going to be doing over the next few months, I have a deadline of the end of October. So we're approaching the middle of August now, so I have until the end of October to finish the book of the activities. The activities are all written. The key thing I need to do is finish the introduction, where I'm caught between introducing key aspects of who and what Hercules is, what classical myth is, etc., and of course what autism is. I'm caught between trying to say everything, right, based on all the blogging I've been doing over the years, and paring it right down. Bear in mind, of course, that people can always refer to the blog. So, with all this in mind, I'm going to pick up something linked with pleasure, something linked with hard work. And thank you very, very much for listening to my talk. It was originally going to be very short. I started enjoying myself so much that it's gone on probably longer than I intended. But thank you so much. I'm going to stop the Zoom thing now. And if you have any questions, I'm very emailable. You can contact me via my blog, etc. Or I'm s.deacy, D-E-A-C-Y, at roehampton.ac.uk. Thank you very, very much. Bye.